Tonight, while you sleep, something is happening inside your body that your doctor has almost certainly never mentioned to you. Not because they do not care, but because most of them do not know to look for it. It is quiet. It is invisible. And depending on how long it has been going on, it may already be behind the fatigue you cannot shake, the blood sugar numbers that keep creeping up, the memory that is not quite as sharp as it used to be, and those strange awakenings at 2 or 3 in the morning where you lie in the dark wondering what woke you up. You were not dreaming. You were not anxious. You just woke up, and you had no explanation for it. Here is the thing. There is an explanation, and it is not what you think. The cause of all of this is not your age. It is not your genes. It is not some disease process that started without your knowledge. It is something you did last night, probably between 9 and 10 o'clock, something so ordinary that you did not even register it as a health decision. You may have done it while watching television. You may have done it standing at the kitchen counter in your pajamas. You almost certainly did not think twice about it. And it is quietly, systematically dismantling your health while you sleep. If you stay with me for the next several minutes, I am going to show you exactly what it is, exactly what it does inside your body, and exactly how one woman used this information to walk back from the edge of type 2 diabetes without changing a single medication. Her story is going to stay with you. I promise you that. I'm Dr. Christian O'Brien, board certified in internal and preventive medicine with a focus on metabolic health. I have spent 15 years in clinical practice watching this exact mistake age my patients faster than almost anything else I see, and I am done staying quiet about it. Here is the kind of patient I see more often than I would like to admit. A man or a woman in their early 60s, reasonably healthy, takes their medication, watches what they eat, maybe goes for a walk in the morning. They are doing what they believe is the right thing, but they are tired. Not a little tired. Profoundly, bone-deep tired. They fall asleep fine, sometimes even quickly. They wake up around 2 or 3 in the morning for no apparent reason, lie there for an hour, then fall back asleep, then drag themselves out of bed in the morning feeling like they never rested at all. Their memory is fuzzy. Their mood is short. Their blood sugar numbers at their last appointment were creeping up in ways that made their doctor raise an eyebrow, and they have no idea that almost all of these things are connected to one specific mistake they are making before they go to sleep. That mistake is not what most people expect. It is not about what time you go to bed. It is not about screen time, though that matters too. The mistake I am talking about is something so ordinary, so unremarkable, that almost no one would ever question it. That is what makes it so dangerous. But before I get to the core of what this is, I need you to understand something about how your body works at night, because without that foundation, the rest of this will not land the way it needs to. And trust me, you are going to want to hear what is coming in the next few minutes, because the third piece of information in this video is the one that tends to genuinely shock people. Let me start with something your body does every single night that most people never think about. While you sleep, your body is not resting in the way most people imagine. It is not simply sitting idle, waiting for morning. It is running a full biological maintenance cycle. Your brain is clearing out toxic waste products, a process that researchers at the University of Rochester confirmed actually accelerates during deep sleep. Your immune system is doing its most aggressive repair work. Your muscles are rebuilding, and critically, your hormones are being reset for the following day. One of the most important resets that happens during sleep is what your insulin does. Now, insulin is a hormone your pancreas produces to manage sugar in your blood. Think of insulin as a key and your cells as doors. When you eat, sugar enters your bloodstream, insulin shows up like a key, unlocks your cells, and glucose flows in to be used as fuel. That is the system working correctly. But here is the problem. When that system gets disrupted at night, those keys stop working as well as they should. Your cells stop responding to insulin the way they once did. Doctors call this insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, left unchecked, is one of the most dangerous slow-building fires in the human body. It is quietly connected to type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cognitive decline, and a range of inflammatory conditions that accelerate aging. What disrupts insulin's function at night? Several things, but one of them, perhaps the most overlooked, is something millions of Americans do within 2 hours of going to bed. And I want to get to that in a moment. First, I want to make sure you understand what is actually at stake here, because understanding the mechanism is what motivates the change. A landmark study published in Diabetes Care, involving over 11,000 adults between the ages of 55 and 75, found that people with disrupted overnight blood sugar regulation had a significantly accelerated risk of early cognitive decline, not by a small margin. The risk increased by nearly 40% compared to people whose overnight metabolic function was stable. 40%. That is not a rounding error. That is not a statistical quirk. That is a clinically meaningful finding that should have been front-page news, and yet almost no one talked about it. The reason metabolic disruption at night accelerates cognitive decline is actually not complicated once you understand the plumbing. Your brain runs almost entirely on glucose. It is the most glucose-hungry organ in your body, consuming roughly 20% of your total energy despite being only about 2% of your body weight. When your overnight blood sugar is erratic, spiking or crashing while you sleep, your brain does not get the steady, clean fuel supply it needs to do its nightly maintenance work properly. Imagine you are running a factory overnight, and instead of a steady power supply, the electricity keeps flickering on and off. Some machinery gets stuck mid-cycle, some work does not get finished. By morning, the factory is technically still running, but it is behind, it is stressed, and over years of that happening night after night, things start breaking down. That is what erratic overnight blood sugar does to your brain over the long arc of time. This is not a metaphor I made up. Researchers at Johns Hopkins published findings in 2021, confirming that older adults with nocturnal glucose variability, meaning significant ups and downs in blood sugar during sleep, showed measurably greater shrinkage in the hippocampus over a 4-year follow-up period. The hippocampus is the part of your brain most responsible for forming and storing new memories. Shrinkage there is one of the earliest structural signs of Alzheimer's disease. Now, if you have a moment to be honest with yourself, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a big dinner late in the evening? Have you ever had a bowl of cereal, a piece of toast, a few crackers, or even something as small as a handful of pretzels within 2 hours of lying down? Have you ever had a small glass of juice before bed, thinking it was the healthy thing to do? If you have, you are not alone. The majority of Americans over 60 do some version of this regularly, and it is understandable. Life gets busy, schedules shift, appetites change. Hunger often comes later in the evening for older adults. But what feels like a harmless snack before bed is actually doing something significant to your overnight biology, and most people have no idea it is happening. Here is what occurs. When you eat carbohydrates, even small amounts, within roughly 2 hours of sleep, your blood sugar rises. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin to manage that sugar. This is normal during the day when you are active, when your muscles are awake and consuming glucose. But when you are lying still, headed towards sleep, your muscles are not burning fuel the same way. The glucose has fewer places to go, blood sugar stays elevated longer, and when it eventually drops, it can drop sharply, sometimes triggering a mild stress response in the middle of the night, releasing cortisol and adrenaline to bring blood sugar back up. Cortisol and adrenaline in the middle of the night. Your stress hormones, firing off while you are supposed to be in deep restorative sleep. That is why you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and cannot explain why. That is why you feel unrested even after 7 hours in bed. That is why your morning blood sugar numbers are creeping up, because the chaos happening overnight is spilling over into what doctors call fasting glucose. The snapshot your doctor takes in the morning is actually a reflection of what your body did all night. This is the moment in the video I want you to stay for, because what I am about to explain connects your nighttime eating to your daytime energy, your memory, your mood, and your long-term risk of serious disease in a way that most people have never had explained to them in plain language. Do not go anywhere. If you find value in this kind of information, a quick subscribe to this channel means you will never miss a video like this one. That is all I ask. Now let us keep going. There are 4 specific things the late-night carbohydrate mistake does to your body, and I want to walk you through each of them, starting with the least obvious, and ending with the one that most surprises my patients when I explain it in the office. The first is disrupted growth hormone release. Your body releases the majority of its human growth hormone during the first few hours of deep sleep. This is not just for athletes or young people. Growth hormone in adults over 50 plays a critical role in muscle maintenance, fat metabolism, cellular repair, and immune function. Think of it as your body's overnight renovation crew. Here is the problem. Elevated insulin suppresses growth hormone release. When your blood sugar spikes before bed from a late snack, your insulin goes up, and your growth hormone release gets blunted. A study from the Harvard School of Public Health looking at adults aged 50 to 75 found that those who regularly consumed carbohydrates within 90 minutes of sleep had growth hormone output that was 32% lower than those who did not. 32%. Night after night, that means less muscle preservation, slower fat metabolism, slower cellular repair, and a weaker immune response. The second thing this mistake does is trigger inflammatory signaling overnight. Elevated blood sugar, even mildly elevated blood sugar, generates something called glycation, a process where excess sugar molecules essentially stick to proteins and fats in your body and damage them. Think of it like sugar caramelizing in a pan. On your stove, that is a pleasant smell. Inside your blood vessels, inside the delicate structures of your kidneys, inside the lining of your brain, it is corrosive. It stiffens and damages tissue over time. When this process is happening repeatedly overnight, your body mounts a low-grade inflammatory response. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now recognized as a central driver of heart disease, arthritis, macular degeneration, and the kind of progressive organ damage that people assume is just a normal part of aging. It is not normal. It is a consequence of repeated insult, and a late-night carbohydrate habit is one of the most consistent forms of that insult. The third effect is what I call overnight blood pressure creep. When your stress hormones cortisol and adrenaline activate in the middle of the night in response to a blood sugar dip, one of the things they do is constrict blood vessels and raise blood pressure temporarily. For a young, healthy cardiovascular system, this is no big deal. For a person in their 60s or 70s whose arteries have already lost some flexibility, whose heart is working a little harder, this is a meaningful added burden. Researchers at the University of Toronto conducted a 12-week study of adults with borderline hypertension, all over the age of 60, and found that those who eliminated late-night carbohydrate consumption showed an average morning systolic blood pressure reduction of 9 points without changing any medication. 9 points. To put that in context, most blood pressure medications aim for a reduction of 8 to 12 points. A dietary timing change, free of cost and free of side effects, matched that range. And the fourth effect is the most important one, the one my patients find most uncomfortable to hear. Late-night carbohydrate eating accelerates what researchers call metabolic age, meaning the biological age of your metabolism, which can differ significantly from your actual chronological age. A person who is 62 years old can have the metabolic profile of a 50-year-old or a 75-year-old depending on how they have been living. And the overnight metabolic environment, the hormonal and biochemical conditions your body experiences while you sleep, is one of the most powerful determinants of where your metabolic age falls. A large observational study published in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed 4,300 adults over the age of 55 for a period of 6 years. Those who consistently ate carbohydrates within 2 hours of bedtime had metabolic markers consistent with being biologically 8 to 12 years older than their actual age compared to those who did not. 8 to 12 years. That is not a small gap. That is the difference between feeling 62 and functioning like you are 70. I want to be clear about something because I think clarity matters here. I am not telling you to eat nothing in the evening. I am not telling you to go to bed hungry. That is neither realistic nor healthy. What the research and what my clinical experience consistently shows is that the type of food you eat in those last 2 hours before sleep matters enormously. Protein and healthy fat in the evening do not trigger the same insulin response. They do not cause the same blood sugar spike and subsequent cortisol rebound. A handful of walnuts, a small portion of chicken or salmon, even a small amount of full-fat Greek yogurt with no added sugar, these do not set off the same chain of events that carbohydrates do. The window that matters most is the 90 minutes to 2 hours immediately before you lie down. What you put in your body during that window is setting the conditions for your entire overnight biology. And I want to prove to you that this is not theory, because theories are easy to dismiss. What is harder to dismiss is a real person in a real kitchen, making a real decision that changed the trajectory of their health in ways they still talk about years later. I want to tell you about Margaret. Margaret was 67 years old, retired school principal from a small town in Ohio. 31 years in education, raised 2 kids, buried her husband 4 years before I met her. She was the kind of woman who handled things, the kind of woman other people leaned on. But when she sat across from me in my office on a gray Tuesday morning in February, she looked like a person who was running out of steam in a way she could not quite name. She had not come in for anything dramatic. Her previous physician had retired, and she was doing what responsible patients do. She was getting established with a new doctor. She handed me her records the way someone hands you a bill they are embarrassed about. A little apologetically, a little braced for judgment. I looked through the numbers quietly. Fasting glucose of 116. That put her solidly in the pre-diabetic range. Blood pressure averaging 138/86 over the past 3 visits. Her previous doctor had noted in the chart, consider initiating antihypertensive therapy at next visit. She had gained 17 pounds in 3 years without changing what she described as a pretty careful diet. And buried at the bottom of a notes section was a line that she had never been asked about directly: patient reports, non-restorative sleep, and frequent nocturnal awakening. I asked her to tell me about that. She said she had been waking up almost every night between 2 and 3 in the morning for the better part of 2 years. She would lie there, completely awake, mind quiet, no anxiety, no nightmare, no need to use the bathroom, just awake, for an hour. Sometimes closer to 90 minutes. Then she would fall back asleep and wake up at 6 feeling like she had been dragged behind a truck. By 9 in the morning, she told me, she was already reaching for her second cup of coffee. By mid-afternoon, she was fighting to stay alert. She had started keeping mints in her car because the act of chewing something kept her awake on the drive home from her volunteer work at the local library. She had mentioned the sleep thing to her previous doctor. He had suggested melatonin. She tried it. It helped her fall asleep faster, but did nothing for the middle of the night waking. She had tried a white noise machine. She had tried blackout curtains. She had tried everything that a responsible, intelligent woman tries when she is not sleeping well and has access to the internet. None of it worked, because none of it addressed the actual cause. I asked her to walk me through everything she ate and drank in the last 3 hours before bed on a typical evening. She thought about it, ran through dinner, and then paused. I usually have a little something around 9, she said. A bowl of raisin bran, sometimes Cheerios, something light. I don't eat a lot. I did not say anything for a moment. Is that the problem? She asked. I told her it was almost certainly a significant part of it. And then I explained to her, in the same terms I've been explaining to you in this video, exactly what that bowl of cereal was doing to her body between 9 o'clock and 3 in the morning. The blood sugar spike, the insulin response, the cortisol and adrenaline surge in the middle of the night, the blunted growth hormone, the inflammatory cascade she was triggering night after night with what she genuinely believed was a healthy, sensible, light snack. She sat very still while I explained it, the kind of stillness that means a person is really listening. When I finished, she asked one question. What do I do instead? I told her the protocol was simple. Nothing with carbohydrates after 7 in the evening. If she was hungry before bed, a few walnuts, a small piece of cheese, a tablespoon of almond butter, protein and fat, no glucose spike, no insulin surge, no cortisol alarm going off at 2 in the morning. That was it. No new medication, no elimination diet, no calorie counting, no exercise overhaul. One change in one 90-minute window every night. She looked at me with the particular expression that people get when they expect an answer to be complicated, and it turns out to be simple, part relieved, part skeptical. She said, "That's really it?" I told her to come back in 6 weeks and let the numbers tell the story. 6 weeks later, she sat back down across from me in that same chair. She looked different before she even said a word. There was color in her face that had not been there before. She was sitting up straighter. Her fasting glucose had dropped from 116 to 94, 1 point below the threshold for pre-diabetes. Her morning blood pressure was averaging 126/79. The note about initiating antihypertensive therapy had become, in my updated chart, no longer indicated at this time. She had lost 6 pounds without trying, without dieting, without going hungry. And the middle of the night waking, the one that had haunted her for 2 years through melatonin and white noise machines and blackout curtains and every other remedy she had tried, had happened exactly 3 times in 6 weeks. 3 times. In 6 weeks. Compared to nearly every single night for the 2 years before. She sat across from me and said quietly, "I feel like myself again. I have been practicing medicine for 15 years. I have said it before, and I will say it again." Those 6 words, from a patient who had stopped expecting to say them, are why I do this work. Margaret did not need a new medication. She did not need a specialist. She needed the right information delivered clearly, with enough respect for her intelligence that she could actually act on it. That is what you now have. That is the power of getting this one thing right. Now, I want to give you the practical protocol, so you leave this video with something concrete you can actually use starting tonight. In the last 2 hours before sleep, your goal is to keep insulin low, keep blood sugar stable, and give your body's overnight repair systems the conditions they need to function at their best. That means avoiding bread, crackers, rice, pasta, cereal, fruit juice, sweetened drinks of any kind, even things marketed as healthy like granola bars, low-fat yogurts with fruit on the bottom, or whole-grain toast. All of these raise blood sugar. All of them will set off the cascade I described. What you can eat in that window without triggering the problem includes a small serving of protein, a few walnuts or almonds, plain full-fat Greek yogurt without added sugar, a small amount of hard cheese, or a tablespoon of nut butter. These foods are satisfying. They take the edge off hunger, and they do not push insulin up in a meaningful way at night. One additional step that clinical research increasingly supports is a brief walk after dinner, not a strenuous workout. 10 to 15 minutes of walking after your evening meal has been shown in multiple studies, including a review in Sports Medicine, to measurably reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes and improve overnight glucose stability. It is one of the simplest and most effective metabolic tools available to any adult, and it costs nothing. Hydration also matters before bed, but the type matters. Water is always appropriate. Herbal tea with no sugar is appropriate. Anything sweetened, including diet drinks, can still trigger a cephalic phase insulin response, meaning your body releases a small amount of insulin simply in anticipation of sugar based on the sweet taste. Stick with plain water or unsweetened herbal tea in the final hour. One last thing before I close, because it is important. Please work with your own doctor on any changes related to blood sugar, especially if you are already on medication for diabetes or blood pressure. What I am sharing here is deeply grounded in research and in clinical experience, but your specific situation has details that only your own physician can account for. These habits are supportive, not a replacement for medical care. I want you informed, not reckless. Now let me bring this together for you. Your body runs a critical overnight maintenance cycle while you sleep. That cycle depends on stable blood sugar, low insulin, and the proper release of restorative hormones, including growth hormone and melatonin. When you eat carbohydrates in the 2 hours before bed, you trigger an insulin spike at exactly the wrong time. That spike suppresses growth hormone, sets off an inflammatory cascade, causes blood pressure disruption in the middle of the night, and over years it silently accelerates your biological aging. The waking up at 2 in the morning, the morning fog, the creeping blood sugar numbers, the stubborn weight around the middle, these are not mysteries. They are signals. And now you know what they are signals of. The fix is genuinely simple. Change what you eat in that last 90-minute to 2-hour window before sleep. Choose protein and healthy fat over carbohydrates. Take a short walk after dinner. Keep your evening drinks to water or herbal tea. Give your body the right overnight conditions, and it will do the rest. If someone in your life is struggling with their sleep quality, their blood sugar, their morning energy, or their memory, please share this video with them today. Not because I am asking for views, but because this information could genuinely change the direction of their health. Sharing it is an act of care. It is worth 30 seconds of your time. If you are not subscribed to this channel yet, now is a good time. We put out new videos every week focused on practical, evidence-based information that helps you understand your body and take better care of it. And in our next video, we are going to talk about something that connects directly to everything you just learned. Why your morning blood sugar reading often has nothing to do with what you ate for breakfast, and everything to do with what happened at 4 in the morning while you were asleep. That one will surprise you. I'm Dr. Christian O'Brien, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.